the entire Trump administration's priority is to actually get the Save America Act passed. We have the proudest and in some ways the oldest democracy anywhere in the world. 250 years we just celebrated, and yet if you vote in California, you're lucky if a month after the election day, your vote has actually been counted. We know that we have in certain jurisdictions illegal aliens who are casting ballots. We know that 80+% of the American people want you to show a voter ID in order to vote, and yet there are a lot of big blue states that make that impossible, will in fact criminalize the act of asking for an ID in order to vote. Why would you criminalize asking for an ID in order to vote unless you wanted to encourage and promote cheating? So this is an important priority for the administration, but more importantly, it's an important priority for the American people to save our elections. The way you save America is by bringing election integrity. It's something that matters. It's a shame that the Democrats aren't going to help us get this done, given that a majority of Democrat voters actually want us to have election integrity in this country. But we've got a good piece of legislation to support the troops, support the farmers, and get Save America Act passed. This, of course, is the first step, but it's an important step. We're going to take it together. We're going to be successful, and we're going to keep on working at it from there.
I just came from a very productive meeting with Senate Republicans, and the conversation has shifted in a very favorable direction. We're talking now much more about how best to do this, not whether to stay and work on the Save America Act, but what procedural vehicle to use in order to get this thing done.
Well, he did it somehow, some way. President Trump just got these feckless senators to finally start talking about how they're going to get this done and pass the SAVE Act once and for all. We're going to get a front row seat on the full court press that President Trump just ran on his own Senate Majority Leader. We're going to see the nearly 20 Republican senators who are in open revolt against Thune forcing his hand. We got a Democrat senator finally prepared to defect and vote for the SAVE Act. And we've got a brand new executive order out of the Oval Office that promises to change our nation like never before. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As always, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments, your questions, whatever you like throughout the broadcast. It'll be my privilege, my honor to answer them right here on this live stream. Also, many of you I know love two things. You love books and you love money, right? Who doesn't, right? Well, if you love books and you seriously looked into making money from home, and I mean actually look, not just wondered about it, gang, this is for you. This is amazing stuff, because right now, today, there are people, I kid you not, pulling in $5, $10, $15,000 a month out of a $30 billion market you've walked past your entire life without a second thought. I'm talking about the used books market. And the only reason that they can make that kind of money is because of a pricing gap sitting right there in the middle of the market. Real, documented, nobody's looking at it. It's insane. It's literally hidden. Here's the gap. The same book, right? So the same title, same edition, same condition, is worth meaningfully different amounts depending on where it's listed. That's it. That's the whole thing. And people with no finance background, no tech background, they've learned to spot it, act on it from a laptop at the kitchen table, and then they're making thousands of dollars a month. Now, here's the part that got me. You never have to handle a single book, not one. There's no inventory in your garage, no packing tape, no trips to the post office, no physical logistics whatsoever. The whole thing runs in your browser. You find the opportunity, you make a few clicks, and then somebody else handles the fulfillment completely. And as you heard, this isn't a side hustle to pad the grocery budget. People are running this full time right now. A number of them have walked away from jobs they never liked in the first place. So I love this. So I'm hosting a free training where my special guest is going to lay out the entire system from beginning to end. How you find it, how the gaps are formed and the like, exactly what you do the moment you've got a gap in front of you, these price gaps, start to finish, no theory, no filler, absolutely free. Go to bkprofit.com/Turley right now. If you love books and you love money, I'm telling you, click the link below, type it in your browser, scan the QR code, do whatever you got to do. Reserve your free seat right now. You're going to absolutely love this. All right, let's dive right in here, gang. As you know, the Save America Act is an expanded voter integrity bill, okay? I mean, I can't even believe I have to actually spell out why each of these very simple and straightforward demands are important. Every single person needs to provide proof of citizenship to register to vote. Every single person needs to show photo ID in order to actually vote. Doesn't matter where you are. It's universal, whether you're in Texas or California. And there is a mandate to yearly scrub non-citizens off the voter rolls. I mean, obviously, there'll be a big, massive purge, but then there's got to be follow-ups as well. Simply put, the SAVE Act universalizes the election integrity protocols that are properly basic to any functioning, vibrant democracy. In our case, a constitutional republic. These requirements are the very requirements that the vast majority of democracies all over the world have instituted for years now. And as such, it's no surprise that proof of citizenship and voter ID requirements consistently poll as the single most popular political issues out there. Don't take my word for it. Here's CNN admitting it to their own rapidly dwindling audience.
Voters favoring photo ID to vote. Among all voters, we're talking 77%. And this is uniform, basically, or universal, I should say. Universal. Democrats, 62%. Independents, 77%. Republicans, 95%. This is something that is popular across the political spectrum. It is a rare thing that is popular across the political spectrum. When it comes to voter ID, the voters are with President Trump on this, whether they're Democrats, independents, or Republicans. Overall, very clear. We're talking about 3 in 4 overall who support the idea of photo ID in order to.
This is why Trump is fighting so hard for it. I mean, 3 in 4 voters. How many political issues do you know of that garner that kind of supermajority support? I mean, seriously. Election security is the very definition of an 80-20 issue. So naturally, that means that the Democrats, as usual, are united in their opposition against it. Remember what Rush used to say, whatever's good for America is bad for the Democrats. Whatever's good for Democrats is bad for America. I mean, that's a universal. What Americans overwhelmingly support, the Democrats will always unanimously oppose. It's literally a law of the universe. And unfortunately, as part of that law, there will always, always, always be a handful of repulsive establishment rhino Republicans to join them. I always prefer Diablo, right? Democrat and all but label. But note, gang, it is never the other way around. It's never a handful, 4 or 5 Democrats joining Republicans in one of their legislative priorities. It's always turncoat Republicans betraying their base on behalf of their establishment donors who hate Trump and hate the MAGA movement and who themselves cannot win without their own form of fraud, like Lisa Murkowski, whose reelection consistently depends on the other sham of ranked choice voting, right? Ranked choice voting crowns a winner who is not the top choice of most voters. And they do that by discarding ballots for eliminated candidates through multiple rounds, effectively manufacturing a fake majority rather than reflecting genuine first choice preferences. So as we speak, 4 feckless rhino Republicans have joined forces repeatedly with the Democrats to defeat the Save America Act. Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, our own Mojtaba, our own cardboard cutout senator, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, who will fortunately be leaving us after this session, and Maine's Susan Collins, who's up for re-election this November. Now, for months, John Thune's answer to Trump, to Mike Lee, to the base was always the same tired, demoralized line. We don't have the votes. We don't. Show me the 60 votes. If you can find me the votes, I can get it passed. Maybe President Trump would like to come to Capitol Hill and find me the votes. If ever there was a funeral director senator, it is John Thune. I mean, the guy literally looks like a mortuary guy. It's so patently pathetic. It's so ridiculously demoralizing to the base. Thune is the Senate leader. He's the leader of Senate Republicans. It's literally his title. It is his job to garner the votes necessary for the passage of the legislative priorities of the leader of the Republican Party. So if Thune can't lead his own brigade, his own senators, then he needs to step aside for someone who can. And so in the face of that incessant wimpiness, Trump did what Trump always does. He escalated, and he escalated hard. So late last month, Trump posted directly at Thune on Truth Social, do not let the Senate leave town until it passes the Save America Act, or far better still, until it terminates the filibuster. Now, that's not a suggestion. That's a president publicly ordering his own majority leader around in front of the entire country, basically telling him to grow a spine and become the leader that he's supposed to be. Remember, the Republican Party is not... actually, let me frame it this way. It's better to frame it this way. Trump and Thune are coming from very different political persuasions, okay? Thune is old school Republican, which means he's an establishmentarian. He's an establishmentarian. He sees politics as fundamentally deliberative. Politics is deliberation. So he's part of our own version of the House of Lords, right? This is the place of second thought. They often refer to the cooling saucer that the founding fathers built in to slow down the passions of the House, right? Where compromise and procedure matter far more than speed, and where you don't torch 2 centuries of Senate tradition on a whim. The problem here for Thune is that the Democrats have effectively blown up that system, that senatorial system. They have no intention of compromising on any issue that MAGA supports at all, ever. I mean, they're not even supporting an issue that literally garners 80% support, majority support of their own voters. They have weaponized the filibuster the same way Nancy Pelosi weaponized impeachment. So they have completely blown apart that establishmentarian senatorial deliberative precedent. Wow, say that 5 times fast. At least when it comes to the bills that matter most from MAGA. So Thune is living in an old politics. He's living in a world that simply no longer exists. And that's where Trump's politics come in, and the politics of the new MAGA Republican Party. Trump understands that in an age of total war politics, deliberation without leverage isn't statesmanship. It's surrender dressed up, like in a powdered wig, right? You don't win a knife fight by quoting Robert's Rules of Order. Trump's whole theory of the presidency and of the executive branch is that if the other side has already burned the rule book, the only honorable move left is to burn it right back faster and make them own the wreckage. Thune wants to preserve an institution the Democrats have already gutted from the inside, while Trump wants to win the actual fight that's happening on the ground right now, today, with real consequences for the country. And that, more than any personality clash, is the entire war being fought inside the Republican Party this week. It's the old establishmentarian elite versus the new Republican Party of fight, 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 win, win, win. So, in that spirit, Trump sent his secret weapon. And that, of course, is the one and only Vice President J.D. Vance. Now, remember, J.D. was a senator, right, before he was VP. So he knows these guys. He knows how things work in the Senate. And he didn't sit back and let this die in a press release war. Vance has been physically walking the halls of the Capitol, meeting with senators, working the SAVE Act angle from the inside. This isn't new for him. He's been embedded in this fight since, at least July, working with Speaker Mike Johnson at the House side and pushing the procedural angles with Thune directly on the Senate side. At the very same time, there's a growing revolt against Thune among his own senators. Nearly 20 Republican senators have either called for canceling recess outright or expressed support for staying in Washington until the bill gets a vote. It all started with the great Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, who we heard from earlier. He's the first one that came out and objected to the Senate going into recess in August, at least until such time as the Senate has passed the Save America Act or has a plan to pass the Save America. He'll be fine with that. That's what we just heard the other day. And then he got joined by one Republican senator after another, to the point now where there are upwards of 20 GOP senators calling for the Senate to remain in session until they pass the SAVE Act again, or at the very least, lay out exactly how it will be passed in time for the midterms. No vote, no vacation is basically their motto at this point. No vote, no vacation, unless they show us how they're going to get it done, and then get it done as soon as they come back. And now we're getting word that the Democrat wall itself is beginning to crack. We've got the first Democrat senator routinely coming out and openly saying he's going to support at least some form of the SAVE Act. And that, of course, is the one and only Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. Now, many don't know that Fetterman has actually been breaking from his own party on voter ID for over a year now. So back in February, he went on Fox and said requiring basic ID to vote is not unreasonable. He rejected the whole insane, ridiculous Jim Crow 2.0 nonsense as fellow Democrats are pushing, except, of course, if it involves shopping at a government-run grocery store in New York City, right? Did you hear about this? Forgive the quick digression here, but Marxist Mamdani was asked, how on earth is he going to ensure that only New York City residents shop at his new government-run grocery stores that discount all items by 30%? Right? If New York taxpayers are flipping the bill, if they're the ones providing the subsidies that allow the grocery stores to reduce their prices by 30%, what's to stop people from coming from, Jersey or Connecticut or Pennsylvania and stock up on all these discounted items, right? I mean, this is great. Who needs Costco when you got Mamdani's Stop and Shop, right? And did you hear about that? His answer was, well, we'll require shoppers to show an ID. I mean, even Joe Rogan was, I forget who he was talking about that with the other day. He's just like, you just gave up the ghost, man. You literally just blew it with that one statement. Think about what he just openly admitted. He was asked basically the question, how do you protect against, in this case, shopping fraud? And what was his solution? ID verification. ID verification is Mamdani's recognized chief means by which to protect against fraud. You can't make this shyster up. You can't. See, every once in a while when they're just, talking and just reality just bites the Democrats. There's just no way around it. It's like watching these, like Uber commercials saying you can now request a female driver. What's a woman? What's a woman? Yeah, Uber. Can you tell us what a female is? I mean, it's just insane. It's who was it? Cori Bush, who just lost her primary. Isn't she the one who's screamed and yelled in a recent House hearing that Republicans were against women's rights. And then one of the Republicans said, "Oh, Ms. Bush, can you just please define what do you mean by woman? What is a woman?" See, every once in a while, just when they let their guard down, reality creeps in for a Democrat. Reality gets the best of them. And then they end up contradicting themselves. And of course, they end up having to, as Mamdani has, they have to backtrack on this because it was so patently embarrassing. It was so obviously hypocritical because, of course, Mamdani opposes voter ID. All right, I digress. So Fetterman has come out in support of a stripped-down version of the Save America Act, one that focused solely and precisely on voter ID. Now, this may actually work to our advantage, which I'll show you in a second. So if the Save Act were passed in chunks, in portions, each provision attached to different reconciliation bills that only require 50 votes for passage, thus bypassing the Senate's weaponized filibuster, then ironically, we wouldn't need another Republican to vote for it in terms of the ID requirement. We just need Fetterman, right? We've got 53 GOP senators, 4 are opposing it. So if we get rid of one and replace it with Fetterman, that's 50. And then JD's the tying vote. So all of this came together this week. And here's Mike Lee's latest update. Here's the complete one.
I just came from a very productive meeting with Senate Republicans, and the conversation has shifted in a very favorable direction. We're talking now much more about how best to do this, not whether to stay and work on the Save America Act, but what procedural vehicle to use in order to get this thing done. So look, I always, this is a step-by-step process. I don't want to proclaim victory, but the conversation has moved in a favorable direction. I want to thank Senate Majority Leader John Thune and our whip, John Barrasso, for leading a very productive discussion today.
So that's Mike Lee after he just came out of a closed-door Senate Republican meeting. And, you know, as you can see, he sounded more hopeful than he has in months. Keep in mind, up until this point, it's always been, we're trying to get the votes. We're trying to get the vote. Here's one way we can bypass. Here's another way, but nobody's listening. No one's doing it. So now his exact framing is that the debate is now about precisely which procedural vehicle they can actually use to get this done. So what I'm hearing there is that this is about, in effect, chopping up the SAVE Act into multiple parts and then attaching each portion to its own reconciliation bill that would only need 50 votes. So as to appease someone like Fetterman in one vote, and then appease someone like Susan Collins in another vote. So instead of trying to pass it all at once, which apparently they just can't do, you pass it in portions. So the vehicle everyone's now circling is the latest House-passed $95 billion budget resolution. It's really neat. The House has passed the SAVE Act multiple times, and each time they've pinned it to a different reconciliation bill. So what the Senate can do is they can chop up their own version of the SAVE Act, put it in portions acceptable to each holdout in the different votes, and then pass the whole thing as the result of the end of the entire process. So this is what it means by this being sort of a step-by-step process. I think in many ways it's brilliant. So among the few holdouts here, each is willing to vote for a particular portion of the SAVE Act, but not the whole thing. And each seems to be attracted to a different portion. So Fetterman wants voter ID. Susan Collins is concerned more about proof of citizenship to register. Fetterman doesn't want the proof of citizenship. Susan Collins may not want the voter ID, whatever. So all you do is you just separate those items, put them on two different reconciliation bills, and boom, you pass both, and you have the basic outline of the SAVE Act that eventually forms the whole. Can I just, you see, this is what Thune is supposed to be doing. As the Senate leader, why is he making Mike Lee do that? Well, I mean, so in fairness, and this is why I'm a bit hopeful, Mike Lee did thank John Thune in that video. Mike Lee has been a real thorn in his side. And so that was very reconciling in a sense. That was he just came out and said, I want to thank John Thune. So obviously in that closed door meeting, John Thune's like, yeah, I think we can do this. He was part of this process of success. So one way of thinking about it is it looks like the SAVE Act now is on 2 tracks or multiple tracks, but with the same destination in the end. So that's where we are right now with the SAVE Act. Again, as Mike Lee said, baby steps, but we're getting there. And there's no question that it was Trump's full court press this week that got us to this point. But President Trump wasn't done. He was not, if anything, the most mind-blowing move came just yesterday. He just pulled off something even more longer lasting that will affect our nation in ways we can't even imagine for the foreseeable future. And for me, this is what I'm really impressed with. This is going to absolutely blow you away. But first, if you're just joining us, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments, your questions. I'll get to as many as I can before we wrap up. And as always, as socialists like Mamdani blatantly defy basic economics and just basic reality, I think it's more important than ever for patriots across the country to tap into proven systems that actually build wealth for us and our families rather than rely on its redistribution, right? So, for example, you want to take a guess as to where the big banks quietly put their money when the markets get shaky? Not in stocks, not in bonds, not even in crypto. Every single year, institutions like Wells Fargo and Chase, we're talking the biggest banks in the world, they quietly buy up roughly 90% of something most Americans actually have never even heard of. They're called tax liens, created by government statute, secured by real American property. And here's the part that got my attention when I came across this. The returns aren't set by Wall Street. The returns aren't even set by the Fed. The returns are actually set by law. They're about as guaranteed as you can possibly get. Now, the big banks would love to keep this wealth secret to themselves, but here's what they can't hide. This isn't just for institutions. It's for everyone. Everyone can do this. Everyday Americans can do the exact same thing, and you can get started with as little as $50, literally $50. Now, a friend of mine named Jay has been doing this for years, very successful at it, and he's teaching regular hardworking folks how to do it too. So on Wednesday, August 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Jay is hosting a free live masterclass, and he's going to buy a real tax lien live right there on the video call, start to finish, nothing hidden, to show you exactly how you can do the very same thing. It's a quiet, steady, law-based strategy that lets hardworking patriots build real wealth on their own terms without begging the Fed, without gambling on the volatility of the markets, and without handing your future to the same institutions that got us into this mess in the first place. No market timing, no complicated strategies, no tenants, no rehabs, no leverage, just a couple of spare hours a week. That's it. Now, this masterclass happens only once, live, in real time. There's no replay of that live purchase demonstration. When it's done, it's done. So do not be the last one to find out about this. Go to turleyclass.com to lock in your spot. That's turleyclass.com, or just text Turley to 72,000. That's 72000. Or even easier, scan the QR code on your screen, tap send, and you're in. Again, it's Wednesday, August 12th, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you at that masterclass. Yeah, we got a lot of things going on here in the Turley Talksville. Lots of wonderful stuff and opportunities for you to financially flourish. That's what we want. We want patriots across the country financially flourishing and setting the stage for a new conservative renewal. Now, let's zoom out, because this week wasn't just about the Senate floor. Yesterday, President Trump signed a pair of executive orders that tell you exactly how far this administration is willing to go on citizenship and voting integrity, even without Congress. The first bans what's called birth tourism. I'm sure you've heard of this. Birth tourism, if you don't know, is the practice of foreign nationals traveling to the United States specifically to give birth here so their child automatically gains citizenship under our ridiculously and absurdly interpreted birthright citizenship laws, right? So the Supreme Court completely dropped the ball on this, no question. But this EO now is trying to sort of bypass, as it were, or even not even bypass, but simply reimagine how we get the very same thing in different ways, the very same, like, of ending birthright citizenship. What are the ways we could chip away at that that's perfectly constitutional? This EO now officially and completely bans birth tourism. It doesn't get into the mechanism per se, which should be as simple as, just simply banning anyone pregnant from entering the country until she's had her child, right? But the one key measure that the EO listed out is that they would be denying visas to suspected applicants and organizers of what are called birth tourism rings. So it is, unfortunately, a form of human trafficking. Birthright citizenship is very lucrative for nefarious groups outside or even probably inside the United States. And when one so-called reporter in the Oval Office during the press conference of the signing of this EO, when that so-called reporter questioned the legality of this ban, Stephen Miller took her to civic school.
Those of you who want to do your research on this, Section 215A of the Immigration and Nationality Act gives the president this authority. 215A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Very rarely used, probably one of the strongest laws in the entire federal code, gives him this power. And that's not the only, but it's the main statutory authority that's being used in this order. So birth tourism is by definition a fraud on the American system, on the American taxpayer, on the American visa. If you're coming here, and again, your stated purpose is that you're a tourist, then by definition, you are here to come for a few weeks, look at what we have, engage in commerce, and leave. So if you're telling a consular officer you're here as a tourist, but your true purpose and intent is to go to a baby mill, give birth, and try to mint an American citizen while you're here, then you're committing a fraud against the American government. And by definition, that visa can and should and will be now denied.
Brilliant. So there you have it. In the past, foreigners pretended that they were coming, for Disneyland or some national park. But the real reason they came, of course, was to manufacture a U.S. citizen child who they hope eventually gets access to welfare benefits and down the line, the voting booth. As of Thursday of this week, just yesterday, that practice is now officially banned. The second executive order was very interesting. It expands who's exempted from birthright citizenship claims. So it's specifically targeting alien enemies of the United States. This is brilliant, right? Who the heck is going to say that alien enemies should be allowed, the children of alien enemies should be allowed to be U.S. citizens, right? So it targets alien enemies, it targets members of foreign terrorist organizations, and it targets people acting as unregistered agents or lobbyists for foreign governments. Again, this is brilliant, chipping away strategy. It's a direct response to ensuring that large numbers of people who would otherwise wrongly claim automatic citizenship no longer qualify for that. Now, Trump himself acknowledged this is the first step of his administration to making adjustments after the Supreme Court struck down his original 2025 birthright citizenship. I think he signed that literally on the first day of his administration, January 20th. But they struck down that original EO that targeted children of illegal migrants. Again, what I so appreciate about what Trump is doing here, Trump is demonstrating that there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? One of my favorite euphemisms, by the way. I think it comes from like 17th century England. It's if you look at its origin, it's pretty macabre. But regardless, he's finding creative solutions to get done what he knows needs to get done, and he's finding those creative solutions given the limitations that are put in front of him. That's exactly what he's calling on John Thune to do. He doesn't get up and go, well, I tried I tried to end birthright citizenship, but the Supreme Court struck it down. So if you want to get me a new Supreme Court, I'll be happy to pass it, but I can't do anything. There's this defeatist mentality has no place in a MAGA Republican Party. And this is precisely where these two events loop together. Whether or not the Save America Act ultimately clears the Senate this month, this White House has made it unmistakably clear that citizenship integrity is not a talking point for them. It's a governing priority they will pursue through Congress if they can, and through executive authority if they can't, if they have to go that route. That's the through line connecting Thune's pressure campaign. That's the through line connecting the recess revolt among the 20 GOP senators, or Fetterman's crack in the wall, Mike Lee's reconciliation path, now these executive orders. Every lane is being pushed at once. Make no mistake, these EOs are part of the pressure campaign where Trump is sitting there in a victory lap. Look at what I just signed. Look at that. Let me take questions. Who wants to? Hey, Steve, tell him how I have the constitutional authority for that. Soon that needs to be you. You need to be doing that with the SAVE Act. And then keep in mind the ultimate option here. If the SAVE Act does ultimately fail, Trump still has the nuclear option. There are growing calls for President Trump, given the nefarious activity of hostile states interfering in our elections, as he showed a couple of weeks ago. They're calling on President Trump to declare a national emergency to save our elections. Now, the latest to advocate for that is Garland Favorito. He's the co-founder of Trusted Election Results in the state of Georgia. He's on the front lines of election integrity, and he just released an urgent public statement this week calling on President Trump to do just that, to declare a national emergency to restore election integrity in the event that the Senate fails to pass the SAVE Act. So we've talked about this before in some of our earlier videos. So if you've been with us for some time, you'll know about this. If not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. But a national emergency declaration is very specific to executive power. And that's because it bypasses the entire slow motion Senate gridlock, and at the same time, it bypasses any activist judge trying to stop it. That's what makes national emergency declarations different than EOs, executive orders, which activist judges could, well, they've been limited now, but they can at least slow down, right? National emergency declarations are beyond, the Supreme Court has made this decision already. They are beyond the purview of the courts. The courts cannot decide what is not a national emergency. The only ones who can stop that is the legislative branch. The only ones who can reverse a national emergency is the Senate, and that's by a 2/3 vote. So good luck with that, right? So if the president has the legal authority and the political will to use national emergency powers to force election security reforms into place, that changes his entire calculus. So here's where we actually stand as of today. As we speak, the Save America Act has not yet passed. It's not yet on President Trump's desk. But the assumption that nothing would ever move, that Democrats would never crack, that Republicans would never revolt against their own leadership, that Thune would never budge on his establishmentarianism, that assumption, all those assumptions are now dead. Fetterman cracked, right? He cracked the Democrat wall, technically speaking. Nearly 20 Senate Republicans are now willing to blow up their own August plans over this. Mike Lee, the guy leading this entire fight since January, is using the word favorable and very optimistic for the first time in months. That's not nothing. In this town, that's a huge breakthrough. President Trump is going to get this done one way or another, and it is now our job to do our part as the MAGA revolution in contacting our senators and demanding the very basic election integrity so integral to our national flourishing. We changed the world before, gang. It's time to do it again. Over to you, over to you, over to you. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Our super chats are still up, so fire away with any questions or comments you have. It'll be happy to answer them right here on this live stream. Also, did you know that U.S. life expectancy actually peaked at 78 years back in 2014? And global life expectancy is declining for the very first time in 30 years. It's because people are aging faster than ever before. And this is largely due to more toxins in the air and chemicals in our soil and our food and other external factors that are new to us. Now, what most people don't know is that we can actually fight aging on a cellular level. Scientists have discovered that kimchi actually slows the aging process of human cells, helping to protect them and delay aging. The power of nature can outweigh the power of pharmaceuticals without the nasty side effects. And now you get all the benefits of kimchi in a simple capsule with Kimchi One. I take Kimchi One every single day. I absolutely love it. Every capsule delivers over 900 probiotic strains plus antioxidants and enzymes that support your digestion, your metabolism, and your skin health from the inside out. You know, as we age, we become more susceptible to microbial threats, harmful viruses and bacteria. But the beauty is that Kimchi One is actually a natural antimicrobial, helping your body fight off harmful bacteria, viruses, and even toxins while boosting immunity and energy. And best of all, Kimchi One's 100% made in America. It's all natural and non-GMO. So do what I do. Support your gut, protect your cells, and feel younger every day with Kimchi One from Brightcore. Now, today you can get an exclusive offer just by clicking the link below. Use code TURLEY for 25% off your entire order, or for an even better deal, give my friends at Brightcore a call for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call right now at 888-597-0233. That's 888-597-0233. All right, Joshua, what do we got? What do we got? Will O'Toole, good AM to all, Dr. Steve. Is it true that Comey or a warrant for his arrest has taken place in North Carolina? Difference between leftists and MAGA. I saw POTUS tweets on his new hair. I saw that too and lost it. Laugh out loud moment for me. Your thoughts on both? I did. I if you haven't seen it, there's these memes now. Trump, he's just acting like a total badass, and he's just got this full head of hair, and it's just hilarious. I mean, it's just, it's silly. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's silly. I have not heard about Comey yet. I mean, I can look it up on my slow computer as it's sleeping here. But we can go back to it and see. I'll look it up. But I have not seen any arrest yet in North Carolina. This would be of his what is 8647 seashell that he just happened to find. Oh, isn't this interesting? And then posted for everyone to see. I'm sure that's going to come. It's just a matter of time, especially with the failed, thank God, assassination attempts. In Human Condition, Democrats voted for every far-left nominee and created a Frankenstein that will destroy them. Read Coppola's 5 laws of human stupidity. If they're elected to the Senate, nothing will stop them. Never underestimate stupidity. Yeah, in Human Condition, you're absolutely right. They have only themselves to blame in all of this. As I understand it, what basically happened is that the rank and file of the Democrat Party got taken over more and more. They're technically known as third worldists. Okay, we've talked about this. Third worldists are those who see the world. They're Marxists who see the world in a civilizational binary. So the first world, the West, is the epitome of evil. We are the ultimate oppressor, and the third world, the global South, are those rising up, rightly so, morally so, against that oppression. And so that's how you have a Mamdani who can cast landlords in New York as occupiers and oppressors, and the police department as like, Israeli defense, literally occupying a city, and then the tenants as the victims, the tenants as those who are trying to rise up and get a better life for themselves, but they've been basically put in this oppressive prison. That's third worldism. And then Islam gets thrown in there because Islam is the principal religion of the third world, and therefore is seen as a mark of sanctity for this struggle. And we saw it with Ilhan Omar. We saw it with Rashida Tlaib. We saw it with obviously Mamdani. Now we're seeing it with El Sayed in Michigan. It's happening everywhere. We're just seeing sort of this third worldist take over the Democrat Party. And the only way, because Democrats are losing so many voters, the only way they felt their party had any future was, to make peace with this growing movement. But the irony is, what was his name? Shri, that is the Indian fellow who just got voted out. Isn't he in Wisconsin or Michigan? I forget where he is. But who files articles of impeachment against Trump like literally every week. He can barely speak English. Well, he just lost. He just lost his primary to one of these DSA's candidates. So they're going to get rid of all of them. That's the irony. They're just going to slaughter all of them, as it were, at the ballot box. And the good news is, I think James Garville is right. I do think Bill Maher is correct. It's going to be very hard for them to win nationally, because their toxic third worldism is popular only among populations that are either majority foreign born and then became citizens later, like in New York or Chicago or Seattle or something like that, or just a very, very high density of them, or just municipal far left districts, cities, counties to begin with. Outside of that, they're considered odious even by Democrats. Let me see. I took a look at this. I am not seeing anything on Comey and North Carolina, unfortunately. So we'll have to follow up on that. But I'm just on X putting it in. So I'm seeing one there that on August 2nd, an arrest warrant has been filed for James Comey. I don't know if it is corroborated, though, so I'd have to take a look at it. Again, you always corroborate things on X. That's important. I love X, don't get me wrong, but people could put up anything on X. So, Rubber Guy, it's ironic. The left says they don't want Israel dictating stuff, yet they always scream Palestine as if that place rules over us as well. Feels like the whole region is calling the shots over us. Yeah, again, this is this is the reverse. Exactly. This is the reverse Israelism that you're seeing among some of the woke right. Is they're allowing Iran and Palestine to dictate their political persuasion towards Trump. Again, it's patently absurd, but it all goes back to this third worldism. It's this universal binary that says that the West is inherently evil, and the third world rising up against it is the moral good. It's the oppressed versus the oppressor, and so exactly, it just what is so interesting that you're bringing out here is the inconsistency of replacing one meta narrative with another one. So they're replacing a meta narrative of whiteness and Eurocentrism and patriarchy, of which they see Israel as a proxy. They see Israel as a Western, as a representative, a micro representative of Western imperialism being imposed in the Middle East. So they take that meta narrative and they deconstruct it, and they show all the bits and parts of how it's evil and how oppressive it is and like. And then what do? They turn around and they replace it, and they embrace another meta narrative that somehow, some way ends up escaping any criticism whatsoever. As a matter of fact, again, you guys remember back in 2020, 2021, at the height of cancel culture, we weren't allowed to criticize, vulnerable communities. We weren't allowed to they were beyond reproach. So there's one meta-narrative where they apply critical thought, and then they replace it with another meta-narrative where they make illegal critical thought against it. You're not allowed. It's so sacred, you're not even allowed to begin to question it. And unfortunately, I think we see that on some former congresswoman's Twitter feed and a former very popular Fox News host, where you're literally seeing Hassan Piker like talking points, third worldist talking points, but just coming more from the right. But it's the same thing. It's an uncritical adoption of a meta narrative that justifies itself because of a radically critical destruction of another meta narrative, and so it's by definition a double standard. Democrats, socialists, alpacas. DSA. Oh, great and layered, Page Professor. Two questions about Pennsylvania. One, at the historic rate we've been going, when do you think Pennsylvania will officially turn red? And two, how do you think Josh Shapiro feels about handing Pennsylvania over to the Republicans on his watch? I've read a couple of, I'll go in reverse order. I've read a couple of different analyses of Shapiro. And I don't know which one is right. I just don't have the inside baseball knowledge. And of course, one is they both can be right, could be fine, quite frankly. But one is, he is an aspirational Democrat. He's as crooked as they come. He's like Kamala 2.0, but he's actually smart and intelligent. But he's a fraud. He hasn't done half the things he claims he's done. Blah 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 blah. That's probably nearly true. There is another view, though, that says, he knows he can't go anywhere in this Democrat Party. In a third worldist Democrat Party, they are not going to elect a Jew. There's just no way around it. It's not going to happen. He's a person non grata. And so in many respects, as a centrist Democrat like Fetterman, in many respects, he has no problem handing over Pennsylvania to the Republicans if this is what the Democrat Party is becoming. Again, these guys, their loyalty isn't necessarily to a party. Their loyalty is to power. And if they see the power evaporating or going in the hands of those that they see as a genuine threat to their own, physical livelihood, they'll go the other way. It's just human nature. They're not ideologues in that sense. So. Oh, and when is it going to flip? Sorry. Pennsylvania. Well, look, it could flip tomorrow. Now, what I mean by that is what we saw was it just past week or last weekend? We saw a voter roll purge that got rid of hundreds of thousands of predominantly Philly inactive voters. And that gave us a net 30,000 and put us within 50,000 now. Or no, we're within 25,000 now of active voters of officially flipping Pennsylvania red. Again, insane, because it was nearly 1 million Democrat voter registration advantage just 10 years ago. So it could literally happen overnight. If we have another purge like that, where we net the 30,000, we got it by 5,000. Pennsylvania's the new North Carolina, right? North Carolina, it took a while to flip, but it finally flipped, and it's not looking back. Like Florida, like Ohio, it's not looking back. Iowa, same thing. And so I think we're going to see that. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in the next year. I wouldn't be surprised. Before the midterm, probably not, but I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year, next August, we're talking about a solid, pretty solid red Pennsylvania, and the trends aren't going to turn. They're just not going to. Again, there's these gimmicky turns where Democrats get these massive influx of voter registration, but that's generally only for primaries, Democrat primaries. Once the primaries are over, they all disappear because they cheat even in their own primaries. But regardless, that's why I think probably within a year. Richard, Dr. Steve, in your opinion, is MAGA splintering or conservative podcasters serving up clickbait? The latter. I don't see any evidence at all. I mean, again, there are some pollsters, they're a bit marginal, who are arguing there is significant polling evidence that MAGA has splintered. MAGA is basically dead. But in terms of the pollsters that really nailed 2024, Insider Advantage, Quantus Insights, they're not showing anything of the like. And even ones that are repeatedly left wing, because remember, studies show that national polling consistently veers 4 points to the left of what actually occurs with elections. They're not showing anything remotely like that. They might show low approval numbers of Trump. They always do that. That's nothing new. Whenever, even Harry Enton has pointed out, whenever asked, are you MAGA? Do you identify MAGA with MAGA? Do you support Trump? Do you support the war? Do you this sort of stuff? It's always very, very high. I mean, we're talking high 80s, 90s. So I'm not seeing that. Bobby Kennedy is still fully on board. Tulsi Gabbard, who's now dealing with some issues with her husband, she's fully on board. The coalition is there. It's strong. His cabinet is strong. There's no actual objective evidence that I can see. The voting registration trends continue to work in the favor of the GOP. Democrats are desperate to just get a few extra seats in the House. They're barely holding on in Michigan and New Hampshire. So I'm seeing a very strong GOP. Now, it's a legit question. In the broader electorate, can Trump have Iran and the midterms? Can he both, have this ongoing conflict in Iran and win the midterms? We have to see. Right now, he seems to think we can. We have to see. But right now, I don't see the coalition cracking. No, the podcasters, I don't know how to say this. So, we in the podcast world, we in the online influencer world, as we're called, we don't like admitting it, but we do live a very sheltered life. We do. I'm putting myself fully immersed in that. I'll even call myself the most sheltered of all, because as you guys know, I don't go out much. I don't collab much. And if I do go out abroad, it's usually abroad, and it's for building Christendom. It's like establishing Christian schools around the world and these sort of things. So I'm not I don't go to conferences. I don't go to, big event, TP USA event. I just don't. It's just not my thing. And so I could see myself as probably the most, secluded person of all, sheltered of all. But I have an analysis that recognizes that and tries to break through that. So one of the ways I learned to do that was through my doctorate. My doctorate is in early Christianity, first century Christianity, particularly the letters of Paul. And I don't have access to that world. I can't study that world as it exists because we're 2,000 years later. So I've developed tools that could help me reach back 2,000 years into that world and try to understand it on its own terms. That's why you always use the term descriptive rather than prescriptive. I'm trying to understand it on its own terms. I'm trying to describe what's going on. And then we could talk, we could have a wonderful conversation. Is that right? Is that wrong? What, blah, 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 whatever. How does it relate to this? Those tools that I've developed, it's technically known as the historical critical method. Those tools have helped me kind of get outside of my own little sheltered bubble and understand what's actually happening in a wide swath of data and information and source, what's actually happening in the world right now. And that's why I've made it. That's why I wrote the book. Civ Cosm does, give that kind of frame to help us understand big picture what's happening in the realm of the MAGA movement and geopolitics that's rapidly turning into theopolitics because of the demographic revolution of religious conservatives who are having kids and secularists or not. Benny Johnson was just talking about that the other day. The rise of technopolitics, right? What's known as the new noosphere, and how religion and science, tradition, technology are actually coming together as the double helix of civilizationalism, and how that moves out into astropolitics, where now we're literally starting to think, how do we rule the galaxy? Quite literally. There are Star Wars-like laws right now governing things like satellites and satellite distribution and elimination and cleanup and lunar bases and space travel and the like. So I try to get out of my sheltered existence on a daily basis and really understand the world with these tools that I developed. Thank you, Durham University, for it. That enabled me to understand what was happening 2,000 years ago. So it's kind of the same thing. But I just got to say, I just think most influencers are very, very sheltered, and they're creating. We also, one last thing, and I'll just move on. We also have something called virtualism that we have to be careful of. And I think influencers fall into this a lot. And again, I'm just being generic. I don't mean anyone particular. But virtualism is literally the creation of virtual reality. So because we spend so much time on screens, scholars have talked about this, we spend so much time on screens, we can begin to blur the difference. And oftentimes there's a very real difference, right? We've all heard that X is not reality, right? We could blur the difference between internet and reality. We can blur the difference of a cyber world and the real world. Now, obviously we want, and that's where my tools come in, we want them to overlap, right? Because the cybersphere is its own integral world, but it should overlap with the physical sphere. Otherwise, we become Gnostics, modern day Gnostics. And Gnostics always claimed to have secret knowledge that they alone had access to, and that you needed to follow them in order to have access to that knowledge. I don't know if that sounds familiar. Sounds somebody who's just sitting in their studio with their laptop claiming to have secret knowledge about what really happened. And you have to follow that person if you want to have that secret knowledge. Just that's Gnosticism. And that's very common with what's neo-Gnosticism with this latest virtualism that unfortunately I do think takes up a lot of influencer content. So there you go. Brian, my good friend, in a recent video mentioned that 80% of Republicans are opposed to socialism. Yeah, right. Yeah, dude. Oh, I could just see us in the old Eagle campus just talking to, who the hell? No, I'm gonna write it for you. Who the hell are the other 20%? Oh, no. Who the hell are the other 20%? I don't know any Republican who thinks it's good. Second, Iran discovered that they could hold the world hostage over oil's most vital choke point. The president has said that Iran is defeated, will be obliterated, etc. for months, yet it lingers on. Iran has had the same deflect and violate game in negotiations for decades. What confidence can we have that this will end well? Great question. All right. Yeah, leave it up there so I could just remember it. Remember these polls. I mean, there are studies that show that pollsters routinely, on average, skew about 4 points. I thought it would be more, but 4 points left on their polls than what is actually happens in an election. And I just have to assume, like you, that poll skewed 20 points left, for heaven's sakes, or 10 points left, or whatever. Tucker is trying to come up with a full-blown sort of, I don't know, I guess an Eastern European version of right-wing culture and left-wing economics. I mean, Trump does this. He pivots to the right on culture, pivots to the left on economics to bring in the working class. So he's very pro-protectionist and interventionist and things like that. He's certainly not a libertarian, for example. But Tucker seems to want to go full, like, Hassan Piker and Abdul Sayed and Mamdani when it comes to his economics. I don't know. I mean, this is just what I'm getting from comments from other people. And that, but I don't see him representing 20% of the Republican Party. I'm with you 1,000%. Even, again, when you even have just the amount of Democrats that support socialism at like 52, 53%, that's still 40%, very strong, who are thoroughly capitalist. And so, yeah, and what all the Hollywood stars say, oh, I'm socialist. Yeah, right. You ain't socialist when you're negotiating your contract for the latest Marvel movie. I can assure you that. So I'm with you. I have to report what's there. Right. Now, in terms of what's going on in Iran, the latest is, and I follow a lot of VDH, Victor Davis Hanson, and Zineb Rabou. The latest is, by all indicators, objective indicators, Iran's economy does look like it's about to falter, and that is what they've been waiting for. So remember, the rial was already dropping into it was a nosedive before the February 28th bombing started. It was already falling apart. It was already out of control inflation. It made the Argentinian peso look, exuberant by comparison. So that was already happening. Then the bombing came. Then the starving campaign happened with our counter blockade, $500 million dollars equivalent of revenue starved in a day. And it was just a matter of time before the economy just breaks and the cash, the rial, just becomes absolutely worthless. And they're arguing they're right at the cusp, and they've been waiting for that. Once the rial is worthless, they can't do anything with proxies because they can't give them money anymore. And they believed that their loyalty to the regime would collapse because it was a bought and paid for patronage system. The vast majority of the loyalty to the regime is paid for loyalty. And so the moment they can't pay you anymore, the loyalty disappears and the regime topples. That's what they're waiting for. So I think that is eventually going to happen. Will it happen before November? And that's the $1,000 question, right? And that's what we'll have to see, right? Trump still seems to think, and VDH even seems to think, that time is running out faster for the regime than it's running out for us. He thinks, based on the polling and these other indicators we're talking about, he thinks that Trump can have both Iran and the midterms. Again, a lot of us think that's very risky. Why risk it? It's almost like our own form of DSA. Dude, you have a free seat here. Why are you risking it by putting El Sayed there? Now it's a toss-up. It was Michigan hasn't voted for a senator since 1994, a Republican senator since 1994. So, dude, this is a guaranteed seat. Why are you ruining it there? This is almost our version of that. Look, I mean, these guys are committing political suicide. We can actually gain seats in the House. Why are we doing this now and jeopardizing it? So I know it's a bit risky for a lot of us, but Trump seems to think he can do it. VDH seems to think he can do it. And so we'll have to see when it happens. But it seems that the ultimate goal is to get them to economically collapse. And if they economically collapse, they can't support proxies anymore, and they can't support supporters anymore within their own regime. And then the regime topples. And then Hormuz now, it's just a whole new ballgame. Technically something worse can happen, but I don't see that at this point. Terry, apart from the Save America Act, will SCOTUS rule on an application for stay of injunction to let the Postal Service refuse the mail ballots in states that refuse to say who among their registered voters is or is not a citizen of the United States? Very good question. I'm waiting on that. I don't know if SCOTUS will give us a ruling before the election. I do not know that. Right now, as I speak, it's bouncing back and forth in the appellate courts. And at one point it was upheld, another point it's turned over, and it's just going to kind of go back and forth. One way or the other, I have a feeling Trump is going to make sure we crack down on blue states before the midterms. Robo Guy, I think one reason people are turning to communism is cost becoming too much, and AI isn't helping either. They rather burn the system down, not knowing they'll replace it with something where, Robo Guy, it's really interesting you say that, because that was whose assessment was. I brought that up. There was, I think it was a Democrat's assessment. Oh gosh, I can't even remember who it was. I don't know why. I think a pretty prominent one. Was it Mark Halpern? Mark Halpern, former Democrat, I guess. Yeah. Oh, definitely. We ship and this was both parties. We ship manufacturing industry out of the country, and that created a vacuum for a lot of communities to feel like there's no upward mobility, there's no way or vehicle for upward mobility. But even more than that, what we're finding, ironically, is the working class is pretty turned off by these, particularly Islamic socialists. So they really are supported primarily by the underclass, the welfare class that vote Democrat no matter what, and the white professional class. And these are ones who are the ones who are getting replaced by AI. That's the irony of it all. And they're seeing themselves stuck with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan, and they can't pay it back because they can't get a job worth having because they have a worthless degree. A lot of them do. And so they see Mamdani and others as the wave of the future. And you said it perfectly. They're not replacing it. It's burning the system down, but they're only the irony is once you burn the system down, you can't redistribute anymore, and they're not building anything. They're parasites. All socialist systems do ultimately is redistribute what producers create. And so the more producers you punish, the less you're going to have around, and the more you're only going to have ashes, nothing else. Texas and La Shock. I was glad to see you post about Sonny, as I think the war on ownership Sony, because I think the war on ownership has gone under the radar. What can actually be done about it? Though, and is the administrator aware of that? Are you talking about me? I don't remember talking about Sony. Let me see. Let me just check my notes for the week and double check. That'll take just a second. You may have confused me with another very handsome influencer. Yeah, I don't have anything on Sony from the week, so I'm not quite sure, Texas. Let's see. War on ownership has gone under the radar. War on ownership has gone on the radar. Yeah, I don't want to presume I know what you're asking. I'm sorry, and you gave us a wonderful super chat. Sorry, Texas Analyst. Maybe if you can follow up with that, if what you meant. But I think you might be confusing this channel with another one. It sounds like an interesting, very interesting topic for sure. Super sticker from Political Viewer 9646. Thank you, sir. Love your thumbnail. Mr. Spock, not so sure we can make it 10 years or better to get it SAVE Act passed in chunks. I know. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. You're very frustrated with how the what's the word? Paralysis is usually, so the parliamentary paralysis. This is, by the way, this is what Europeans are going through. This is what's freaking out and upsetting Europeans so much, is they're seeing their establishment parties in their parliament not being able to accomplish a damn thing. And that's what's giving rise to the right, as it were. So, no, I'm with you. It's very, very frustrating. MAGA is an executive movement that moves very fast because executive power, which Trump is really the first president since FDR to reawaken federal power, executive power. It was more or less usurped by the administrative class of unelected bureaucrats and agencies. So we've taken that back. And it's great, but gosh, I mean, yeah, you've got the DSA saying they're going to abolish the Senate. And I've made the comment, there's no need. The Senate's abolishing itself. It's literally turning itself into a relic with no rationale to exist. All this, well, it's the cool saucer that cools down the hot water. Oh, shut up. I mean, it's dysfunctional. Don't try to hide your blatant dysfunctionality and corruption behind sanctified talk. No question. So I'm with you. Yeah, it's frustrating. Roman Nation, if John Fetterman ran as independent for president, I think he would take the entire Rust Belt. Democrats need to be careful. You don't even know he can get on the ballot. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, Democrats do need to be careful. I don't think he's gonna be an independent. Bobby Kennedy couldn't do. I mean, Ross Perot did had a very good showing in 92 with 20%, but no one's even come close to matching that. And again, that was in 92. Laws have changed since that make it even harder. So good luck on getting on the ballot. So that's what I mean. He'll become a Republican, especially as we see Pennsylvania flip red in the voter registration, and with the extraordinary, very positive Pennsylvania Republican approval rating that he has. Music and fiction. If SAVE is not passed, I am certain we'll see National Guard and ICE at the polls. The Red-Green Alliance won't like it, but their opinion does not matter. Amen. Absolutely amen. They have no power. I mean, the way Mamdani just absolutely embarrassed himself with it. We're going to arrest Netanyahu. I don't care what you think of the guy. Mamdani does not have that power. A city mayor doesn't have the power to arrest the prime minister of another country. This is the virtualism infecting Mamdani's sense of reality. So these guys don't have power. They've got power, at least some power, over the people living. Crazy Katie in Seattle, or Brandon Johnson in Chicago, Mamdani in New York. They've got power over the people who are stupid enough to be living there right now, but they don't have power over the federal government. They don't have power over us. And it's our job just to make sure they never do. And again, even if they did, it would be such an unbelievable disaster, and there would be such an uprising. You would see so many Democrats, moderate Democrats, again, like centrist Democrats like Fetterman or Van Jones, or who's really not happy about this stuff, or Bill Maher. Remember, don't forget, Elon Musk voted for Biden in 2020. Elon Musk was a Democrat. I don't know if he was a registered, but he voted Democrat, and he admitted to that. And now, so just the transformation of this move. And why? Because of this woke nonsense. And that woke nonsense, when it's married to the civilizationalism that I talk about in civcosm, civilizational cosmocracy, when you have wokeness marrying civilizationalism, you get third worldism. George Rivera Jr., Fetterman is a fraud. He talks huge, but votes with his buddies. Think the Fauci vote. Yeah, when the chips are down, he folds. He will not cross over. I hear you, George. And what you're saying is not untrue. So how do I put this? He's a fraud because he has to be. He's a fraud because he has to vote with his own coalition. Once he flips to becoming a Republican, if he were a Republican on that panel, he would voted to get rid of Fauci. He even said to Fauci, I'm embarrassed. I regret that I actually trusted you. So what we have to understand is that politics is about power. And if you want to play the game of politics, you have to play on the team that you're on. You play for the team you're on. So but that said, he knows that he cannot win a Democrat primary for re-election. He knows that, right? 80% of Democrats, 80% want him gone. He has one of the lowest approval ratings of any senator within his own party. And so there's no way he's going to win re-election. So don't be surprised that after the Republicans hold the Senate in November, that he makes a switch and gives us an extra seat. Don't be surprised. Again, remember, these guys don't necessarily, ideology is not what animates them. I know it animates Ron Paul or Tom Massey, but that was their business model. That's how they got their checks in the mail from libertarians across the country who believed that they were helping to grow the movement. Fetterman isn't a movement guy. He's a very practical guy who knows the rules of politics, and he's found a niche for himself. And his niche is to be the new Joe Manchin, where he can get on Fox and get very favorable coverage in conservative circles, and then use that as a leverage to more or less get what he wants from his Senate caucus. And to the extent that he's getting what he wants from the Senate caucus in the Democrats, then he's going to vote with them. He's going to play his part, but he's going to break away from them enough so that they give him what he wants in order to bring him back and to get those votes, like for Fauci. But he can't survive. He can't do that for long, as Joe Manchin couldn't do that for long. So either he's going to have to give up. He's not going to go independent. I don't see that. So either he's going to have to give up and just retire, or he's going to go Republican. That's the way I see it. Taco Woman. Mike Lee for Senate. Yeah. I don't know if he can see the problems. I don't know if he can win. That's the problem. That again, it's a dysfunctional institution. But yes, Mike Lee would be phenomenal. Who knows what happens after when we get 3 new mega senators from Texas and Ohio and Kentucky. He may win. Rebel Squirrel, passing save in separate pieces has historical precedent. The Compromise of 1850. Stephen A. Douglas broke it up into 5 bills and got each passed with shifting alliances within House and Senate. Brilliant, Rebel Squirrel. I did not know that. But that's exactly it. This is what Trump is saying to Thune when he says, end the filibuster, pass it by reconciliation, do whatever you need to do. What he's basically saying is, John, figure it out, dude. Figure it out. I don't give a rip if you don't get rid of the filibuster. I don't care. Just get it passed. That, the ends determine the means, right? Just get it passed. TM Saab, did they pass the SAVE Act? Not yet, unfortunately. We are waiting on it. Texas and LaShaw, I started to get the sense the tide was turning when Thune lashed out at Caroline. To me, it said it was getting to him, but also that he's afraid of Trump. Otherwise, he would have gone after him instead of a surrogate. Yes, that's very interesting. It's very good. And that's usually what people do. If they're trying to hit Trump and they know that's political poison within the Republican Party, then they try to hit one of his surrogates. Again, you see this among influencers. Oh, Trump is great. He's just being betrayed by the neocons that he led into his party. Well, he's an idiot for letting these neocons in the party. You're still hitting him, that kind of thing. But I think you're right. No, Trump was asked if he endorsed Thune for Senate leader again, or even for re-election, and he refused to say yes or no. So we'll have to see. So again, that's his way of saying, John, you're on probation. You're on probation, and if you don't deliver here, I'm going to come out swinging against you, because he's in a solid red state. And if Trump endorses a primary opponent, he'll get Liz Cheney to easily. Luis Guruz, why do you think Thune is establishment instead of a Bush operative, anti-Trump, pro-illegal alien invasion, Paul Ryan-style Trump agenda saboteur? That needs to be a T-shirt. That needs to be a T-shirt. Why do you think Thune is establishment instead of? No, that's what I mean by establishment. I don't know if you're being cynical there. That's what I mean by establishment. The Bush operative, anti-Trump, pro-illegal. Yeah, the establishment is the globalist establishment. The establishment wants open borders so as to bring in cheap labor, so as to satisfy the CEO class that then serve as their principal donors to keep them advocating open borders. They like to ship out manufacturing and industry so as to maximize the margins for their corporate donors, and then leave our Rust Belts highly unemployed. And then they like to denigrate our culture, customs, and traditions, because the moment we start noticing the demographic disruption and replacement, they push back by calling us racist, bigots, and white supremacists and the like. So that's the establishment in a nutshell. And Thune is part of that. It's a soft version of it. It's not the hardcore, Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi version. But I mean, he was voting to send our manufacturing overseas. He was voting for borderless globalist policies. He was doing all kinds of things like that. And he may not beat up our culture, but he let the Democrats do that. And he certainly wasn't defending it, was he? So, Nancy Firkins, do you have a good source of definition to counter the libs? And Katie Turr comments, misleading one-line definitions between Democrat socialism and communism and any other isms they twist to convince liberals to hate MAGA. Yeah, I mean, so the media, so you want to put this in perspective. The media are what we call progressive realists. Progressive realism is a belief system that more or less is rooted in the late 80s, early 90s. It actually, ironically, comes from Francis Fukuyama, who argued for the end of history on a geopolitical level, where he said a liberal international order is inevitable. History is just moving in that direction. So it's a kind of a Hegelian Marxist. I won't get into that, but bottom line, they believe that history naturally and inevitably bends towards a left-wing vision of social justice. History always moves in that direction. So 1994 Gingrich revolt, that was Peter Jennings. Do you remember? He called that Americans having a temper tantrum. In other words, it's temporary. It's temporary, and it'll eventually recede back to normalcy. The Bush presidency, he should never have won. Hanging chads and blah, blah, blah. Trump, that's just because Vladimir Putin interfered in the election. Right? Talking about election integrity. So life is always moving to the left. There are periodic interruptions, but those interruptions are temporary. Life is going to go back to the left. So, and this is the key for the legacy media, you can never be too far left. Because if you're on the side of the left, you're on the side of history. Democrats are always innocent until proven guilty. Good luck trying to prove them guilty. And Republicans are always guilty until proven innocent. Good luck trying to do that. That's the progressive realism. So, the answer to the DSAs, what's the difference between socialism and communism? It's not hard. In the end, socialism has levels of degrees of collectivism and centralization. So you've got a Denmark version and so forth. Those are technically sort of social democracies. They provide the welfare state and all that sort of stuff. That's not what you have operative here. That's not what's going on with DSA. They're not, I mean, that's how Bernie Sanders, and that's again how CNN are going to try to pacify. All they want is just free healthcare. That's it. They just want free healthcare. They just want Medicare for all. That's it. They just want to take care of the people who are trying to come across the border, not criminalize them. That's it. That's it. No, that's not it. The key to communism is Marxism. And Marxism is a dialectic materialism that says dialectic means you've got two sort of opposing forces that kind of play off of each other. There is an oppressor force and there is an oppressed force. That's it. If you don't have those two forces, you don't have Marxism. It's just that simple. That's the dialectic we talk about. You've got an oppressor and you've got an oppressed. You've got a victimizer and you've got a victim. You've got an aggressor and you've got the aggrieved, okay? What we saw in Marxism/communism was a universal belief that economics always has, the economic history has formed ultimately two classes. A bourgeois class who own capital and a proletariat class who are slaves, in effect, to that bourgeois. Because the only way they can get money is by working for the bourgeois and doing stuff for the bourgeois. And the bourgeois then hands them out peanuts for all this hard work. And so the solution is to eliminate the bourgeois, replace it with representatives of the workers, the proletariat, who will take the money that just somehow exists out there, that the bourgeois sort of captured like Smaug the dragon in The Hobbit, right? But the gold just exists out there. And what they're going to do is they're going to redistribute all that money to the people. But the key is the only way it works is if you've got that binary, if you've got that dialectic between an oppressor and oppressed. And tell me one sentence that comes out of the mouth of Mamdani that doesn't appeal to that oppressor-oppressed framework. We're going to tax the rich. You don't hear that in Denmark. You don't hear that in Sweden. That's not where they're coming from. It is a bona fide kind of socialist, centralized structure, but that sees everybody as a part of it. We're all going to go. So yes, there are producers there, but as producers, we're going to make sure you have free healthcare and all that sort of stuff. It's a cooperative I'm not saying I like it, but it's more cooperative. Whereas communism is a battle. It's a fight. It's a clash between an oppressor class and an oppressed class. And what makes these new communists different is that rather than seeing it in terms of money per se, though Mamdani's pushing that with affordability, they're seeing it in terms of culture. There is white supremacy, and Mamdani plays off of this. There's white supremacy, and there's everybody else. There's patriarchy, and there's everybody else. There's cisgender superiority, and there's everybody else. And on and on and on. There's Western civilization, and there's everybody else. There's the racism of Western civilization, and everybody else, of course, never have anything to do with racism whatsoever. That's the frame that then justifies some very, very horrible things carried out in the name of justice. So that's how you can push it away. Bottom line, communism is a binary. It's a dialectic between oppressor and oppressed. That's communism. Sorry, that's not socialism. Socialism is just an economic system or network or structure. Communism is an ideology. And so that's why in the end, we call them DSAs, but they're communists. They are full-blown communists who see Western civilization as the oppressor that needs to be destroyed from within. That's not socialism. That's communism. That's Marxism. And then if you do not join that morally righteous crusade, then you're part of the problem and you need to go down with the system as well. So there you go. Christy, why hasn't Trump called for Thune's resignation? Do you think Mike Lee will replace him? Also, Trump endorsed Andy Ogle. Yeah, he lost his primary. Your opinion? Yeah, he did. He did in Tennessee. Look, no, right. Thune. The last thing you want Thune to do is resign. I'm sorry. I mean, I know I see a lot of, Thune needs to resign. Well, who are you going to replace him with? Who's going to get all those votes? Who? Don't say Mike Lee. Mike Lee can't get the votes. So our House of Lords operates by its own rules. And you got to fight within those rules, right? So no, Thune is the Senate Majority Leader. He's there because he was the senior senator. Rick Scott was the no, but Scott didn't have the votes. And there's nothing to say he would have the votes after this. And there are plenty of senators who say, well, I don't mind working under Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. I wouldn't mind. I'm not going to be bullied. But again, this is politics. It's all about who's got leverage and the like. So Mike Lee would be wonderful, but I don't know. He couldn't replace him because he just doesn't have the votes. That's his own problem. He's got to work that out. Now, Andy Ogle, that was an interesting one. And that came out of left field or right field, whatever your persuasion is there. We dropped the ball on that. I think, again, that's an RNC thing. And it's a deep red district, so we don't have to worry about it. But Ogle's great, but he was a little scandal plagued with some financial mishandling. Accusations, not proved or anything to my knowledge, but that scandal was there, and it did damage him in the eyes of his constituents. Also, his district got redrawn, and it included much more farm dense regions that his opponent comes from. So his opponent already had all those political connections with them, and so he was already a bit damaged. And then there was, in fairness, there was a PAC led by a Democrat that poured all this money to try to get rid of him. It was stupid. It was a waste of money. It's not like the seat is going to go blue. But they just wanted to replace him. And but they replaced him with someone, I forget his name, but he's thoroughly MAGA. Nobody's questioning the MAGA agenda. So this was sort of an in-house debate, as it were. And Andy Ogle lost. Unfortunately, he's a good guy, but he'll just be replaced with another MAGA guy. Paul Lemede, any word on a collab with Promethean update? No, I haven't. But thank you guys. I just haven't followed up yet on that. Josh, I don't know if you want to make a note to see if Dimitri or somebody can reach out to them. DJ LSB Vapes. It's disgusting, this communist takeover. I came here from Europe a while ago, and I feel like it's deja vu of what I ran away from. Deport these traitors. You're not alone, DJ. You're not alone at all. I have a good friend from Russia, grew up in Moscow, and that's exactly what he says. He said, I just listen to them talk, and it's the same thing. Again, that's the difference between socialism and communism. Again, I ain't a fan of socialism. But the difference is socialism is really an economic system. Communism is an ideology. Communism is the declaration. The communism is the notion that the world is made up of an enemy and a friend, of a dictator. I shouldn't even say it because politics is technically that. Carl Schmitt taught us that. But it's made up of an oppressor and oppressed, a victimizer and a victim. That's why they're always the victim. Always. That's right. They always play that way. So. And so he said, what do you think they did in communism and in the Soviet Union? That's exactly how they did it. Now, it was formed more in terms of materialist means and capitalism versus socialism. But, and again, Mamdani will do that, right? The warmth of collective, what a clown. But he's hearing the same thing. Yep. He said, this is Act 2. And he said now he's a gun-toting patriot, so he has no intention of falling victim to that. Robert Driscoll, Dr. Steve, could the Clarity Act piggyback for a vote behind the SAVE Act. Yeah, is that the? I think so. Is that the Clarity Act? Is that the crypto? Let me see. Hold on a sec. Let me just remind myself of that. Yeah, but I'm assuming it could if it's finding its own problems, as it were. Oh, what's going on? Oh, okay. It's looking up. My AI is going slow today. Yeah, Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. Yeah, most comprehensive U.S. crypto regulation ever to advance. Yeah, I think so. Again, it'd be interesting to see what Democrats would be opposed to it. I'd be surprised if that. I mean, outside of Elizabeth Warren and so forth, I'd be surprised if that didn't clear the filibuster. But we'll have to see. But again, same thing. It does. Well, especially with a U.S. Bitcoin reserve, it could. I could see it passing as a reconciliation, as it does deal with some kind of budgetary issue in that sense. So it'll be interesting to see. Ken, the Dems are splitting. How do you see this playing out and over what time span? Does one side form a third party? This is nearly impossible in the United States. No, I agree with you. That's why, I mean, apparently is Tucker talking about forming a third party? I mean, good luck. I mean, if the richest man on the planet couldn't do it, good luck, right? Yes, but they are splitting. Keep in mind, this is James Carville, who's been talking a lot about this lately. This is James Carville's sounding the alarm to donors to starve the Democrat Party until they get rid of these DSA guys. He's sounding the alarm to the media. Stop platforming these guys with these puff interviews, making everyone think they're just cute little socialists and nothing more. And socialism is good. Stop doing that, because you're going to kill this party. So it's sort of a clarion call disguised as, well, yep, that's what's going to happen if these guys take over. I'm out of here. So it's a warning that they're supposed to take seriously now, so as to push these guys out of the party. I think it's too late. I think they're taking over. They're the MAGA version of the Democrat Party. MAGA being the people taking power back from a corrupt elite in their party and restoring national sovereignty, economic sovereignty, and cultural sovereignty. These are leftist populists, the leftist citizens taking power away from their corrupt establishment elite. But they want to restore wokeness. They want to restore radical socialism and progressivism and third worldism. I shouldn't even say restore. They want to impose wokeness. So MAGA movement is a restoration movement to make America great again, whereas DSA is a revolution movement that's about wiping out what made America great and replacing it with a third world version country in their own image. So I see them splitting at some point. I think they will come over to the Republican Party. I think JD has already shown that. The interview he had with Bill Maher, to me, is very comparable to the relationship that Trump had with RFK Jr. I think there is something there where, okay, what do you want, Bill? What are you looking for? I just, look, I want rule of law. I want free speech. I want you to stay the hell out of my bedroom and my life. And so, Bill, you got it. In California, we're not going to touch it. You debate, but you do want election integrity. Of course I do. Okay, we're going to take care of that. You do want those borders secured. Of course I do. Okay, we're going to take care of that. So I think JD is going to be a very transformational figure in this transition of this, what's left about this, 40% of Democrats who just don't want anything to do with this DSA freak show. 2828 OZ Bear, I guess. Any bet Sarah Palin will turn her back on Trump? It's irrelevant. Sarah Palin just doesn't have any political clout anymore. I don't know, but it's just irrelevant. She doesn't have any political clout. Our education system has been purged of basic history of Western civilization, leaving it vulnerable to redefinition. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's why we're such passionate advocates here of classical education, of returning to the education of the medievalists, actually going all the way back to Plato and 4th century BC in Athens, and where students learn history, art, architecture, music, poetry, great literature, great books, and all made coherent through restoring theology as the queen of the sciences and teaching them Latin, teaching them Greek, all that good stuff. That's changing the world as we speak. So but the public school system is just basically a socialist factory at this point. MDE, moral question. Why did we outlaw segregation? Seems after civil rights, we hurt the black community and over time gave the government a political race weapon. Yeah, it's interesting. No, moral question. Well, I mean, the answer to it morally, simply put, is because we are a Christian society. We see the human person defined by virtue of their relationship to something that is itself not human. And it cannot be found in any human quality. So to be human is to be created in the image of God. And if you are human, our laws then require that we all be treated equally under a law that ultimately finds its source in divine revelation. So all the founding fathers were natural law theorists. And so meaning that law isn't made up. Law is eternal. Law comes from God. And then we create our own instantiated, culturally specific, nationally specific laws that are supposed to be sort of microcosmic reflections of the divine law. And then the argument was that we work that out through time, reflecting on how we're being consistent with that divine law. And it was thought that segregation was inconsistent with the idea of one law for all citizens created in the image of God. It's just basically that simple. Now, you're talking about with civil rights. I don't know where hurt the black community and then gave the government a political race weapon. Yes, I will say that I don't know what do you mean by hurting the black community, unless you're talking about the way we saw blacks congregate in cities and urban areas through social policy promises. But a lot of the argument there, I know Dinesh D'Souza said that actually begins really with FDR. I mean, it's post-segregation, but not really into the 60s. Does that come into full fruition? So, but prior to that, FDR was the one that kind of turned blacks from being pretty staunch Republicans because of Abraham Lincoln into staunch Democrats because they were getting some free goodies, as it were. That's his argument. Nothing, it seems to me, has hurt the black community more, or any community for that matter, or even the whites that are on it, than the welfare state. If you get locked into an underclass culture, it's just a disaster. It's just terrible, and that's not human flourishing. But in terms of it being turned into a political weapon, sure, that's for sure. But that's the Democrat. I mean, again, you could take anything good and turn it into a weapon. Right? The tree of life, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? The serpent turned that into a weapon. I mean, anything good could be turned into a weapon. So there's nothing. I mean, Christianity could be turned into a weapon, right? So how many of the pastors that you've all met been choir boys? Right? Not me. So moral question. That's why, because what separates us is not race. What separates us is human versus non-human. And no, this doesn't mean that ethnicity and race and so forth aren't a factor in terms of who should make up the nation, as it were. So if you want to have an immigration policy that favors, say, Northern Europeans, that's I go more power to you. There's nothing that says you don't get to select which cultures from the world you want to bring in. I'm just saying, from a moral perspective, I can't see anything from there. But in terms of who's already here, we're all made in the image of God, and the laws apply to all equally, and therefore there cannot be segregate or discrimination on that basis. And the Supreme Court's been pretty consistent with that. But yeah, it's been co-opted into this third worldist Marxist binary of oppressor versus oppressed. It's also known as grievance politics. But the good news, is even what's his name, McWhorter. He's on. I'm forgetting his name. Gary Leary's a professor over at Brown University. I forget. It's just my brain not working. But a black scholar. He's said openly, black grievance politics is dead today. It's gone. It appeals to the least amount of people it's ever appealed to. It only appeals to a very, very tiny amount. I mean, look at, Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton on MSNBC. What do you think his audience is? He's lucky if 40,000 people are tuning in. I'm assuming. I don't know, but he's got a tiny little audience, and nobody cares about it anymore. So, woman's, I can't say it. Woman's anti-ravage or Democrat socialism implies that you vote for socialism instead of having a gun up to your head. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you vote for it and then try. What's the old saying? You can always vote your way into socialism. Good luck voting your way out, right? Live Free in USA. Hi, Dr. Steve. Have you seen Wild in the Streets, 1968? If not, it's a much watch. There's an eerily similar narrative. Talk about life imitating art. I will write that down. Wild in the Streets. I will look it up. Sounds cool. M. Remington, DSA, Islamification of the U.S. are symptoms, not the primary driver. We have to look at the City of London globalists pushing all of this. Yeah, definitely globalism is there. And the irony is that the third worldism that ties DSA and Islamification together will do everything they can to overthrow the globalists wherever they are, London, Brussels, DC, Davos. They'll overthrow them. It's technically bio-Leninism. If you don't check off the right ID boxes, or if you're just not part of the club, they'll get rid of you. So, but yes, it is an ideology that is deliberately being pushed on us. I wouldn't even say just the Londoners, as it were. I would say as well, because I'm not as up on that as say the Promethean ladies, but certainly Beijing, Moscow, they're pushing stuff like that in our social media feeds. Pushing third worldism that they can see definitely weakens the country. Page, I guess we have the required senators to have a challenge to Thune. We only need 7 more totally to vote him out. Yeah, but good luck getting the 7. I hear you. Good luck. I'm not trying to be a wet blanket here. I'm a realist. I just don't see it. It is an inherently dysfunctional institution right now. Remember, the Senate has not passed a real bona fide budget or bill, I should say, law bill that changes the laws of the country beyond reconciliation. They have not passed a genuine law bill that was able to get over the 60-vote filibuster since 2012, since Obamacare. Okay, it's been that long. It's been over a decade since they have seen a major bill that changes the laws of the land passed in the Senate. We are in a legislative paralysis right now. And that's why Trump's like, kill the filibuster and we'll break the paralysis. It's not a problem. Lennox Man, it seems that the current political landscape in the United States is no longer supported by two parties. Do you think that the formation of a third political party is possible in the United States? If not, why not? Yeah, no, because the two parties, well, so keep in mind, as I understand, the framers could have done a parliamentary-like system like they do in Europe. They found that radically unstable. And keep in mind, European governments are often run by what are called technological governments or technocratic governments. So that's when you have a bunch of parties, nobody gets an outright majority. And so they have to form coalitions with one another. But then, as you can see, those coalitions break and they fall apart. And, they go full, they just take their ball and run home. And so rather than having an election every other month, they bring in a technocratic government. And these are people that are technically not of any party. They're just professional administrators who take over the government. And again, not that the founding fathers were thinking this way, but they realized, I think, that having multiple parties is problematic. So it morphed into more or less two parties so that one will have a majority. All right. You're going to have a majority in the House. You're going to have a majority in the Senate, if you can, and a majority, and you'll win the presidency. Somebody's going to win the presidency. So you can have split government with one president of one party, a House of another party, Senate of the president's party. You could do all kinds of things, but somebody's going to, in the end, be in charge. And for lack of better sense, I mean, that's the way. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. If you don't like it, take over the party like MAGA did. Take over or like the DSA is doing. So what happened is MAGA got taken over. I mean, on one side, MAGA got taken over. I mean, Republicans got taken over by MAGA. But now it seems you've got some influencers who don't like what MAGA has become. So now they're splitting off and trying to form their own party. Good luck with that. Even, again, the richest man on the planet couldn't do that. And the reason is because the two parties have made it legally nearly impossible to run as a third party person. They've made it nearly impossible. Yes, you'll see like what we just saw in Michigan. Yes, you'll see, a Green Party on there here or there, or the Constitution Party, but they're barely getting 0.1, 0.2, 0.3% of the vote. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the donors. They don't have anywhere near the network institutional power to pull it off. So I don't think so. No. Take over a party. That's what you got to do. Fathom Welcome. Texas has more registered Democrats than Republicans. Is that gap closing like in Pennsylvania? I may be wrong, but I thought Texas doesn't register according to party. So let me see that. I think Texas is one of them. Let me check there. But anyway, either way, I'm sure it's closing just because of how red they are. I would be surprised if Democrats still outnumber Republicans, to be honest with you, in Texas at this point. Yeah, it doesn't register voters by party affiliation, so we wouldn't know. But they're winning. I mean, Trump won Texas by 14 points, so obviously there's more Republicans than Democrats. But that gap is happening. That gap is closing in Pennsylvania. Mem Remington, love you, brother. Can please take a second to explain why giving aid and comfort to the CCP does not attract a charge of treason or sedition? I generally don't understand. I don't know if I can answer that question, to be honest with you. Again, I guess they could say freedom of speech. Well, you can't do that as an elected official unless you're Swalwell. So I don't know. I don't know quite the answer. Again, I just think, we do have the Communist Act of the 1950s, but it's never been enforced. And most legal scholars laugh it out of their classrooms in terms of its constitutionality. But I'm with you. I mean, I just think there's you got to draw the line of what's accepted in terms of foreign alliances. That's for sure. Christopher C., if we keep the Senate and the House, what would you like to see Trump push for? I'd like more public biblical education, pro-life policies, and stronger budget cuts. Yeah, I mean, Trump is not going to push pro-life policies. No, I mean, he'll do pro-life policies at a federal level, but he's not going to get involved with New York or California or anything like that. Because, I mean, really, the overturning of Roe v. Wade settled it. This is not a federal issue. This is a state issue, and has to be resolved with the consent of the governed. I like the more public biblical education. Certainly school choice. In his first administration, he really was interested in pushing universal school choice. I'd love to see something like that because that will only help education. Stronger budget cuts, and we'll see. Yeah, he's trying that. I mean, he's doing it more through regulations. So for every one regulation you pass, you have to scrap 10, things like that. My thing for me is I think he's got to clean up our universities. He's got to do that. Our universities are literally sleeper cells, and the radicalism that's made its way into the university, the cultural Marxist radicalism, has to be expunged. These are not professors. These are ideologues, and they're doing everything they can to brainwash these students into becoming communists. And that's it. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. As always, like I did last week, keep abreast of this channel, because if there's some breaking news and analysis, I will be your back porch professor on Saturday morning. Until then, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Love you. God bless.